Welcome in to Studio C, episode 8 of the Rip City Wrap-Up here on the Rip City TV network. Yes, we found where the camera is now, so we can say hello, or we could just do right now. Hello. Thank you for tuning us after the Blazers game against the Phoenix Suns. 103-97, the Blazers fall on the road to Phoenix. A back-to-back. We already know this was going to be a tough one, but they kept this game pretty close, and it was pretty fun early on if you guys were able to catch up and watch it on K2 2.2. Boys,
Danny looked pained right there.
Well, you said the first half.
Danilo.
You said the first half was fun. I was like, what?
I said fun because both sides were like, eh.
If you like close basketball, it was more reminiscent of like the high school four corners offense where not a lot is happening. Not
It was
a lot
gross
of scoring.
in the first half.
It was gross. It was
Gross first half.
Yeah.
Gross third quarter. What a fun fourth quarter. I mean, they're one ball rattling out of the rim from taking the lead late in that game against Phoenix. And given how the third quarter went, I don't think any of us thought that was going to happen.
No. 103-97. Blazers fall 2-5 on the record sheet now. Boys, first, just overall thoughts of tonight's match. They're back-to-back against the Phoenix Suns. What do you guys think?
Well, you're playing the two top teams in the Western Conference, and you have two of the best teams in the Western Conference.
And by record, you're
Certainly.
not wrong. They're now 5-1. They're only lost in the season, coming to Lakers.
They're right there. The Suns are going to be a fun dark horse team as the season goes on. We can talk about them in a little bit. But if you take the back-to-back games as a whole, I think you got to feel pretty encouraged. I know both third quarters were really lousy. You saw Tom say that's been a theme throughout the season. But there's still fight in this team. And it was nice to see Chauncey with the change of pace in the fourth quarter lead to immediate results. Yep. And the team fed upon that. Phoenix went ice cold from the field, and Portland had a chance down the stretch. So 2 losses, sure, but I feel pretty good about the back-to-back.
Yeah, I think when you take a look at just the OKC game real quick, outside of that third quarter, they played really well. That's going to be a theme, and how you fix that, how you address that, whether or not it's the slow starts, It's funny, they've had slow starts to start games, and they've had slow starts to the second half. So it's clearly it's a thing there, and how they go about it, what they do to change it, what they do to address it, not really certain. They've tried some things. Like, you can see wrinkles that they opened up a game against OKC playing Find Isaiah Joe because they had a general idea of how they were going to cross match. So that shows a level of preparation. The execution just isn't there. And I think the problem with that is you've got a very young team and you've got a limited number of players that can execute on their own without needing some additional help. And I think it's not it's baked in, right? It's
the droughts and the runs and the ebbs and the flows.
It's not a bug, it's a feature. And that's the way the roster is set up right now. You've got one shot creator in Anthony Simons who is a consistent shot creator at all 3 levels.
Yep.
Scoot had a rough. Maybe I'll be blunt. Scoot had his worst game of the season.
That's why Banton was in the game in the fourth quarter, and it totally changed the complexion of the game.
And shouts to Chauncey for making that move, and he's done that now a couple times, but not just with Scoot, but he's gone with Ryan Repair, he's gone with Jabari Walker. He's basically like, all right, let's see what somebody's got tonight. And I think even Don McClingan had some extended minutes against the Pelicans because he had a nice little run, and I think he's showing these guys. I remember Shaedon Sharp's rookie year, 2 years ago, where he was maybe given a little too much leash because he was starting to show a little bit and maybe not necessarily earning some things. And you have to be careful how you deal with that in a locker room. And I think this is very much a keep what you kill situation, as Chauncey has put it over the last couple of years. If you're showing that you go out there and you deliver, you get the opportunity to go back out there. And before it was like, well, Ant doesn't do that, Jeremy doesn't do that, DeAndre doesn't do that.
They've earned it.
They've earned it.
They've
done it for years. Exactly. And that's the thing is like, and so Scoot's got to go earn it. Donovan's got to go earn it. I think Toumani's getting to the point where like he's earned it. I don't think it's necessarily 100% there yet, but the young guys, you got to go out and then kind of grab a hold of it. I think tonight Delano Banton absolutely did that. He was phenomenal, not just offensively, which has kind of been his MO, of getting downhill and being opportunistic, but he brought some much-needed energy and some juice defensively, and you saw him get some deflections. You saw Denny get after it. You saw Two get after it. And you really think about that when you've got that lineup out there. 6'4" Anthony Simons, 6'7" Delano Banton, 6'7" Toumani Kamara, 6'8" or 6'9" Danny Avdia, and I believe Jeremy was out there too, 6'9" Jeremy Grant. Your small ball is still really big. And even though you don't have necessarily the greatest rebounders on the floor, Two's a plus rebounder for the wing. Denny's a really good rebounder for wings. I mean, the argument really is on the defensive glass is between him and Jason Tatum for the best defensive rebounding wings in the league. So even when you go small, you found them that there's opportunities where they're securing not only defensive rebounds, but offensive rebounds.
And a 6-point loss. That's pretty close for a back-to-back. And
they covered.
They did. They did. And I think just one of the key things that we can, talk about this game was both teams were kind of bad.
Oh, no.
Absolutely.
I mean,
it was not good.
The Blazers shot 33% from the field. They took 111 shots tonight. Phoenix shot 37% from the field. And Phoenix wasn't good besides the third quarter. I mean, they scored 43 points in the first half and 44 points in the third quarter. And then they stunk in the fourth quarter. They made a few buckets late to climb to 16 points. But that aided Portland's ability to get back in the game, Phoenix being so cold. And Portland had a decent stretch to end the first half and a good stretch in the fourth quarter. But that was basically it from the Blazers, too. It was them taking care of the basketball that allowed them to score points tonight, because shooting 33% and taking 111 shots, you don't think you're going to get close to 100 points. And Portland did, because they took care of the ball.
Not just that. One of the things that I'm tracking this season, going into the game against the Thunder, they were 5th in blocks and 17th in steals, like your stocks, your steals and blocks combined. And it's a thing that it's not always a clear indicative point of success defensively. But tonight, I mean, you look at the box score tonight. 10 more steals, 6 more blocks. Like 10 steals is not a low number for a team. That's a good number. That's a positively disruptive team. And you look up and down the board, it wasn't like one guy had 6 steals and was just crazy.
Yeah, 4 had 2.
I mean, you had Toumani with 2, you had Denny with 2, you had Ant with 2, you had Banton with 2. You just kind of go down the line. And then, Chauncey Billups in the postgame last night after OKC, we asked about rebounding. You look at the rebounding night, Ayton had 13, Toumani had 10, Jeremy had 7, Denny had 6, Ant had 8. That's
impressive.
That's a collective effort from guys who aren't necessarily known as rebounders. And you had 15 rebounds from Jeremy and Ant. So you're getting the extra stuff from guys, which is allowing them to stay in an awful game like this.
You're getting the effort, the energy as well, right?
You are, and in the third quarter, to kind of go against those rebounding numbers,
Sounds like
I was
last
monitoring the offensive rebounds early in the game, because that was the big point of emphasis coming into tonight, defensive rebounding. And there were a few times you could tell the fellas were doing it early on, even though they weren't shooting well. They were doing a good job cleaning the glass when Phoenix was missing a shot. And a few times, in fact, Denny and DA were kind of battling for uncontested rebounds, which you want to see a little bit better communication, but I like the thought. And right after the midway through the third quarter, Phoenix was up to like 10 offensive rebounds. It was the second chance opportunities that we saw last night for OKC, and it was the same thing tonight against Phoenix that led their opponent to a long scoring run. So it's pretty clear to see what's happening and why the third quarter is going poorly. It's just a matter of fixing it.
Yeah.
I think the team is kind of, in a way, when I look at it, they're adapting who they're playing, at least in the first half. That first half, one of the quotes actually that I remember that Chauncey Billups was talking about in the post game was just that we were right there, we were close, but he also just talked about how in these games they're able to find a way to almost win, like each time. And it's funny because when you're watching this team, you're thinking this is not a team that should be winning in a way because of where they want to go in the future. But they've been playing to the wall each and every game this season, despite who they've been able to have on the court.
They're now 1-2 in 50-50 games, right? They got one. We did not expect this to be a 50-50 game, but it turned into one down the stretch, and Portland is 1-2 in those games. And it's going to be interesting to monitor that as the season goes along. Folks, I know we're worried about winning. Everything's fine right now. But it'll be interesting to monitor that as we go along and what Portland decides to do offensively and defensively in those situations. It's something to keep an eye on as we go along.
I got to say this before, Danny. I know you got something. This is the funny part that I want to talk about. Danny, you know how Danny can be. He's very critical. He knows exactly what's about to happen. But one of the funny things when we were watching this game, when Delano hit that 3 in the fourth quarter, Danny's energy skyrocketed. And it just kind of... It was pretty fun to see. It was fun to see.
I like to see the young guys be successful.
And
I like to see them have their moments.
People were coming into the office because, so pull back the curtain. We're in an office. It's just the three of us. The doors are closed because these people are trying to save the world out there in the news department. God love them for it. And I start getting pretty animated once it gets to 6 points, once it gets down to 4 points. Then it's a one-possession game. And then you have a three for the chance to take the lead. People are coming into the office. We're screaming. We're getting excited. And
the ball touches every last inch of the rim and spins out.
It's so close.
You know.
But this is what you want to see. You want to see a young guy who isn't getting a ton of playing time come in, change the complexion of the game, get a chance to be a hero, not quite execute, but still a sensational game.
Yeah, no, I will never change this. I love generational players like Dame, like Giannis, like Joel, like Jokic.
Toumani, yes.
I mean, look, I love those guys and everything they do. My favorite part of the NBA is the first 4 or 5 years of a guy's career. When they come into the league and they figure it out. Like that, watching that growth, that development, the light that comes on, like it's very cool, and I'm very privileged that I get to go to every game, get to know these guys, and pre and post game, I get to talk to them on and off the floor. And a simple one, like last year, Chris Murray struggling to shoot, and he has a good game where he knocks down multiple threes, and I get in the locker room, how you doing, man? And he's like, good. I mean, you can see him like, I'm happy for you, and he's like, thanks, man.
An incremental step was made.
But you could just see like this burden come off of his shoulders.
Sure.
And it's like it's the coolest thing, you know. A simple one. I was talking to Donovan Clingan after the first game against the Pels, and he goes, did you see when Zion ran me over? And he goes, I took it. I didn't go. And he goes, it's going to be interesting. You know, it was before the OKC game last night, and I go, what's the going up against Zion one night and Chet the next? And he's like, yeah, don't think I've ever done that before. You know, and it's like watching these guys try to piece that stuff together in a season where right now they're 2-5. They're 14th in the Western Conference, 25th in the NBA. Okay, that's where
so everything's okay.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
Everything is going as planned. But you're getting moments. I think Scoot has had moments. I think Toumani has had moments. I even think Denny, despite his shooting ability struggling so far, has been wildly productive.
Groups, Chris, you can go down the rotation and find positives.
Things are
from
going
everybody
well
for the first 7 games.
Yes.
I think, and we talked a little bit about this last night, but I think going into the season, if you were to map out how you wanted things to go, this is kind of it. You're seeing something from all of the young guys. They're competing in games. They've had a couple they've lost down the stretch, and you're not winning too many games to freak people with the tinfoil hats out too much. At least yet.
At least yet, right? Make sure to join our conversation. Use the hashtag RCWrapUp. And when we get a second here, we're going to pull up the Blazer box to see a little bit of what's going on with social media when we get a second. Right here, this is coming from Beerman. It's a question that I found very interesting when we were going through social. Ant is having a tough time getting the ball to go through the hoop. We know he's a great shooter. Is there something different about the offense this season that is contributing to his slow start? Danny, Ant's your guy.
Ant Whisperer.
Yeah, I mean, he came out of the preseason with only playing the one game, dealing with a little bit of an ankle. I think it's just a matter of working his way. I mean, we know from history Dame was always kind of a slow starter. I think Ant is kind of similar in that vein. He's also, the roles are changing a little bit. You know, it's as much as Ant is, what he finished with tonight. Was it 23 shots that he got up?
24, 8 of 24, 20 points.
And a lot of it is he's trying to pick and choose his moments and not force it because it is different. Even though he knows that they're relying on him to generate most of their offense, both from his own looks and getting others involved, you don't have consistent output everywhere else. Like, yes, you have Jeremy, who's going to be a guy that you can trust, even though he didn't knock down as many shots tonight. You know where he's going to be. You know the shots he's going to take. You know if you get him a ball in the spot, you know how to set him up. Same thing with DA, and we can talk about DA and Nurk in a minute. But like outside of those guys, you don't have consistent rapport or a lot to draw on just because of how many injuries they suffered last year, including Ant. So they're still trying to build that up, and there have been some differences offensively. Like they're running some different actions on the backside. They've brought some of the double drag series stuff that they got rid of last year. I'm kind of waiting until I get 10, 15, 20 games more of film, and I can kind of see where the percentages are of like what they're trying to do, because different opponents, who they're going against, they can murky it up a little bit. But I'm not worried about Ant until we get to like a 20-game mark of like he's shooting under 40% or something along those lines.
I mean, when you talk about the infrastructure of the Blazers, Ant has been the infrastructure for a while now, and the pieces continue to change around him. They're trying to do different things. And I think until you have a consistency in the group around him, you're not going to see that with Ant. I don't necessarily think Ant is forcing it or taking a lot of bad shots. It just doesn't seem like a lot of the open looks are going down. And with someone that shoots at the volume of Ant, he's going to have hot stretches and cold stretches. I think he's just more of a cold stretch now.
And I think you also have to rely on the fact that not everybody's available. Shaden isn't available yet. Matisse is also still out. Robert is still out. So they are kind of switching the offense to what they thought was going to be available when the season started. So they're adjusted a little bit. So Ant's a star. We know he's a star. We know he's a shooter. Him and Jeremy Grant are two of the top shooters on this team. Just because he's kind of had a slow start in terms of the stat sheet, it doesn't mean that he's had a slow start in general in helping this basketball team win games.
Well, just look at tonight, Tyree. I mean, he had 8 rebounds and 6 assists and 2 steals in addition to the 20 points. So even though he took 24 shots, he was finding other ways to contribute when he was on the floor. And you take a look at the number of shots.
On a night where everyone shot awful.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, and we were talking about it before the show, you look at the number of shots that Jeremy and Ant took. They combined to go, 16 of 47 from the field.
Not great, Bob.
It's not great. And when you're going to take that many shots, you would hope that Ant and Jeremy take a lot of them because who else is going to take them on this team, frankly? They just didn't happen to go down.
No, I mean, the Blazer fans are frustrated right now. Arguably, at least in my mind, the greatest scorer in the history of the game was 7 of 16 tonight in Kevin Durant. Devin Booker was 9 of 23. Neither of them are taking over. And if you look at the looks that Kevin Durant got tonight, there was 5 different times where he caught it wide open and bricked, and I'm just sitting there going,
left it short all night.
Don't play that game. Please do not find out if Kevin Durant can shoot, because the answer to that is he's a career 50, 40, 90 shooter. He's the best shooter in the history of the game when you're talking about totality and scoring. It is what it is.
Yeah, and it was one of the fun things. It was one of those things where this was a game that if the Blazers were going to win, it was a one that they could have gotten just because everybody was kind of on an equal term and an equal playing field. You talked about DeAndre Ayton tonight and Yusuf Nurkic.
I mean,
yep.
Revenge game. It was their revenge games essentially for both of the guys. One Blazers, former Blazers with Yusuf, and then obviously Ayton, former Phoenix Suns. Listen, I was in Miami when you guys had Yusuf, so I kind of want to hear you guys' perspective tonight on the revenge game for both guys.
Well, I don't know if we're going to be able to fit it all in before the break, but we'll try to do as much as we can. It was pretty funny. That's the word I'm going to use.
No,
what happened between DA and Nurk? Because you could tell very early on both of them were pressing offensively. You could hear the Phoenix fans booing DA anytime that he had the ball. When Nurk was backing down DA, they were cheering like, get him, Nurk, get him, Nurk. And at the end of the day, it resulted in an outcome that both Suns and Blazers fans are used to with their previous center and their current center. Everything looks so good. They get that incredible look at the bucket, and it just doesn't drop. And everyone bangs their head against the desk because you see 95% of it, and they just can't get the other 5%. Yeah. There's just something out of reach for both of those guys when it comes to that physical style of play and really pressing and trying to assert their dominance. You just have the sense that they're not going to come through and finish.
DA's not a post-up guy. It's never really been his thing. He did a little bit in college at University of Arizona and early in his couple years, or his first 2 years in Phoenix. Chris Paul spoon-fed him buckets. And that's not like a slander towards DA. That's what Chris Paul does.
He brought the airplay in for a lot of people.
David West, loved it. DeAndre Jordan scored endlessly because he throw ball perfectly at rim.
Victor Wembanyama, who
he's going to capitalize off that.
It helps a lot, right?
Point guard at a lot of points for DA. And he has got some of the best touch of any big man I've ever seen. His touch is unreal. But how he gets there sometimes, you're like, well, what's the process here, DA? Because he's such an incredible athlete. He's so big. He's so strong. He's so dynamic. The one that he gets a pass. I think it was Ant that let him in, right? Ant fires a pass in where he basically leads DeAndre Ayton to the rim, and instead of letting the normal action take him through, which is what he did with Chris Paul would direct him to the rim with the pass. He spun back right into Nurk's chest. It's of don't go at very large man chest. It's not a It's of don't go at very large man chest. It's not a
and the only reason healthy in 2019 the Blazers actually would compete for a championship, because to Nurk's credit, when he was on his run before the devastating injury, he was the second best player on the Blazers at that time. He was
20,
playing
10, and
better
5. He was incredible.
than C.J. McCollum on that team, and the Blazers still found a way to make that run. And that's sort of the thing. It's the promise of something you can't quite capture with Jusuf Nurkic. And I don't know if I'd put DA completely in that category. I just thought it was funny that they were both going at each other as hard as they were trying to, and they were getting the same result that we would all expect.
Yeah, every time they went at each other's chest, it was just two like magnets pushing away from each other. It just didn't work.
Well, make sure to use the hashtag RCWrapUp. When we come back after the break, we'll talk a little bit more about Jusuf and Ayton, and we'll also look ahead to the New Orleans Pelicans game on Monday. Stay tuned. More of Rip City Wrap Up after the break. Welcome back. Studio C, episode 8 of the Rip City Wrap Up here on the Rip City TV network. 103-97, the Blazers fall to the Phoenix Suns. And you already know Jusuf Nurkic and DeAndre Ayton revenge game. It was kind of a little bit of a battle. Last regards on them.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting the place that Suns fans are in with Nurk, because it's sort of what happened in Portland, but the timeline is accelerated. And I think it's because the Suns are a lot closer to a championship than Portland was when Nurk was here. And so he is sort of the glaring black hole of that team right now from a guys who are going to be getting consistent minutes. And you saw that tonight. And Nurk pulled down a lot of rebounds. He got 15, but he went 1 of 6 and was pretty ineffective. A lot of rebounds. He got 15, but he went 1 of 6 and was pretty ineffective offensively. And it would have been nice for Phoenix, when the outside shots aren't falling, to be able to dump it inside and to get a couple of those to go, to maybe spread the defense out and get even better looks and start to get rolling. So,
or to get the playmaking Nurk back. And
where is he?
Yeah, and this thing is, it was comical. The one shot that he hit was a 3 right after Ayton missed a 3.
Because it was those guys trading threes. Look, I mean, welcome to 2024 NBA, folks.
Both those guys can say that they didn't care. It wasn't that big a deal. It wasn't this thing. Like, I know for a fact that it was, and it has been. Nurk got mad at me 2 years ago when I said I preferred DeAndre Ayton over him. You know, it made him get bristled up and not talk to me for a month.
I prefer that too.
So. And again, like, it's, you know, it is what it is. And the fact that they were traded for each other essentially is that it's going to lead to
It's like the Peyton Manning Ryan Leaf, but not really, right?
Yeah,
you're always going to be tied together as a result.
Yeah, and the thing is, and look,
I thought you were talking about talent level.
But you get the Suns fans are like even more frustrated, not just because they're in the title window, but because they got to their wits' end with DA, and they had their own issues, and It is what it is. I think a trust was burned between both DA and the Phoenix Suns organization, which led to the fans as well. But it is what it is. And I wish that, honestly, I wish both players had performed better tonight. It would have made the game more watchable, that's for sure.
It'd been more fun to talk about, too.
Yeah,
I think
but
it was watchable.
it also is kind of funny that they both kind of canceled each other out.
They did the thing you expect them to do.
I mean, Nurk was 1 of 6, DA was 3 of 13. Like, it's
Yeah.
essentially the same thing. Like, DA was
it's the Spider-Man pointing me.
Yeah, there was really nothing one did over the other. And the funny thing was, is I thought both Nurk and DA got great looks. Like, I don't think they really
That's the funniest part about it. Because when Nurk was here, he got a lot of great looks, and he didn't make them. He was shot put it at the backboard.
Well, DA is historically a great finisher, and that's how you know he was pressing. Because when he's not, like, the mistakes he makes are not making the pass, or making the pass too late, or not having the necessary footwork to get to where he is, or it has nothing to do with the finishing stuff, because he's a very good finisher. He's one of the best mid-range shooters we've ever seen, and he's incredibly athletic. The things you want, like, get to the free throw line more, be more physical. Like, they're more intangible than tangible. With Nurk, it was always, please, for the love of God, use your 7-foot, 300-pound butt.
Be big.
And be big.
Be big.
And which
we screamed that at Nurk for 4 seasons.
And what was the frustrating part is you knew it was in him, but after he broke his leg.
That is the frustrating part.
It's like, and it was.
And it's so difficult to quantify how much the leg plays into it.
I mean,
it really is.
You and I know. Like, I had somewhat of the same situation happen, and it's like, I get it, the mental hurdles that you
Of course.
have, like, you just don't want to get off the ground because that injury is so devastating. And I've never once held it against him. I 100% get it. I wish there was more, but and I think the Suns, they don't have that connection.
Right.
They didn't watch this guy
Well,
who was playing out of his mind.
It's that thing you talked about.
Snap his leg.
It's that thing you talked about, Danny. Seeing someone earlier in their career, because when Nurk came here, I don't think the expectations were super high.
He was
that
a
he was going to
cast-off.
be a big contributor. And then Nurk fever took over Portland, and he kind of had a slow start to his first full season, but then he picked it up as the calendar flipped.
The Bosnian Beast was born.
The Bosnian Beast was born, and you were thinking, like, this is a legitimate running mate with Dame and CJ that you can build a championship team around, and then it all kind of fell apart pretty quickly.
Can I ask, since I wasn't in the city around this time, when I got here, I heard the talk about Nurkic, and you guys are very passionate about when he was here in his stint in Portland. What were the fans saying about him? Because when I hear it now, it's
it's revisionist history. It's the negative stuff because of
It's
how
the most recent.
Yeah, and that's.
Okay.
I mean, Joe and I, when we were doing another show, grotesque injury.
We talked about it for an hour. That's
Yeah.
all. That's all we talked about that night,
Like,
because it wasn't just an injury, and it wasn't just the nature of the injury. It was what the injury was going to mean for Nurk, what it was going to mean for the future of the franchise, and what it was going to mean for the fans being with this team for however long Nurk was here and beyond, knowing the short and long-term impact that was going to have. And that was, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, because it was a very real, palpable thing. You could feel the moment it happened, an entire fan base reacting the same way.
So you have to separate the two things. Like, Nurk pre-injury was moving towards not the best center in the league, but a very, very productive, one of the better playmaking centers for sure. Like, it was Jokic is here, Nurk was here, but like
His passing,
working is in the short roll off Damian Lillard, who is the best pick and roll scoring guard if you go by most metrics of the modern NBA.
It's not like it was going to be like Walton, Sabas, and Nurk, but he was almost rounding into sort of the cousin of what those guys represented in Portland. A big man with touch, vision, could finish and do the little things.
And partnered incredibly well with Damian Lillard.
So would y'all say that the reason why I was looking at you and I was kind of thinking slowly, it seems as if that hurt kind of harbored on to the 8 instinct that's here in terms of
I
the
think
way
that's
that.
real.
No, I think
fans
it's the
did
same
well
way
for.
with Phoenix and Nurk.
Okay.
I think this is such a casual and bad way to put this, but I don't know another way to do it. The idea of, like, they traded each other's problems.
That's right.
But I don't know if there's necessarily problems or burdens, because it's not fair to them, because they're not problems as people and they're not burdens as people. But like the essence of it.
Right.
And they thought that by moving on for
baggage.
them, there you go. The baggage is a better way to put it. They thought that by moving the baggage on, it would clean up
Change
the
of
other
scenery.
players,
Exactly.
the other
Okay.
players'
Yeah.
baggage. Like, well, if we get DA out of here, Nurk will cover up for the DA's shortcomings, but they didn't compensate for Nurk's shortcomings. And the same thing here. Like, when I said that I would prefer DeAndre Ayton over Yusuf Nurkic when Nurk was still here, it was because I prioritized the athleticism, the size, the availability, and the finishing. I went, look, if you put that with Damian Lillard, that's the thing, because I'm working on an article right now about, and one of the things that some Blazers fan asked was, is Ayton's screening a problem, basically? Because he's not. Yusuf Nurkic is one of the best screeners in the NBA.
And we saw that a couple times tonight.
He's fantastic at it. And DA is more of a guy who slips or ghost screens, and he wants to get into the short roll. And it's because that's where he lives. He lives in that mid-range. He wants to get to that pocket and get to that spot. Damian Lillard can manipulate that. It doesn't matter if you're not a guy who screens like Yusuf Nurkic. Ant can kind of manipulate that. Scoot is still struggling with that. Shaedon Sharpe, when everybody went down last year and he came in and started to run the offense, his first couple of games, he really struggled because he didn't know how to really manipulate a pick and roll, and Nurk made that so much easier for everyone else, and that is a different issue for these young guards that kind of navigate. So, yes, you lost Nurk's screening, but you gained DA's finishing. So it's like, which one do you prioritize and how do you go about it? And I think that impacts dramatically when they kind of prioritized a rim running big, so to speak, in DA who can play above the rim. He's not DeAndre Jordan by any measure, but he's thrown down more lobs in a year and a month than Nurkic probably did in 6.5 years here.
Yeah, but Tyree made the really good point that it feels like whatever happened in the past is being attached to the new player in the new location. I think
100%.
that's a very real thing because you have been questioning, and I think rightly so, why fans are so frustrated with DA despite putting up very solid numbers as a center in the
last
NBA.
season when everybody was down, and even this season, he has not. Every game they have played this season, that's 7 now consecutive double-doubles to start the season.
And I think you've unlocked it, Tyree. It's that whatever DA does, there will be the shadow of Nurk behind him. And it's the same way in Phoenix. And clearly things ended differently in Phoenix for DA than they did in Portland with Nurk. I think there's a lot more ugliness and distrust in Phoenix, and in Portland it's just a lot of regret and unfulfilled potential. But the point still stands. The guy in the new location is paying for the sins of the person they replaced.
Sounds like the same equation, different numbers with Scoot Henderson and the Damian Lillard situation.
To a degree.
To a degree. Same equation, just different numbers and how people are kind of seeing it in that way. I'll say this, and then we can move on. DA is a great player. I think he has continued to be a spark, but shining bright spot in this team that consistently continues to put up numbers, and he's great in the community. I'm advocating for DA right now because I am a big DeAndre Ayton fan. I love what he does. I love that he's brought to the team. And tonight, the revenge game was interesting. It wasn't obviously the numbers that we.
It wasn't exactly what he wanted.
It wasn't, but he did what he's normally good at.
You
rebounding.
brought up an interesting point, though, and I try to fact this in, particularly when I'm evaluating young players, when I'm looking at drafts and like incoming players, incoming international and college players. And a lot of this has to do with, so often we talk about what a player can't do. What can a player do? And I think that's where you see a player like Toumani Kamara shine so well, is that, and Chauncey Billups has been open and honest about this. Toumani came in and had a workout with the Blazers last year before the trade went down in the pre-draft workouts, and he got pretty poor reviews because I want to say it was like his 12th workout in like 15 days. He was not good, but he went to Summer League and he absolutely balled out, and he was a guy that the Blazers front office had really targeted. And so when the trade talks advanced, it was basically the deal's not getting done without Toumani Kamara. And even though Toumani Kamara didn't really shoot well in college, the idea was we love everything else. We think that, if the shooting comes around, it matters. And I think DeAndre Ayton, to your point, is a fantastic defensive rebounder. Fantastic. He's a fantastic finisher. And there was like, well, he won't set screens and he won't do this and he won't. It's like, but what he does do well, he does really well.
10, 13, and 2 tonight. You can see the numbers from our starters right now on your screen. Just checking out the player stat. This is actually a perfect time for you to continue to join the conversation using the hashtag RCWrapUp. When we get a moment, let's bring up that tag board to see a little bit of what's going on with social media. But also, this is a perfect transition to the next segment. Where are we now with this Portland Trailblazers team? 2-5 now. Just fell to the Phoenix Suns. They got the next game is going to be on Monday against the New Orleans Pelicans, a team that they've already seen. And we see, actually, we got one right here. Second phase, Solomon. Did Delano Banton earn himself more minutes after tonight's performance?
No. The answer is no, because the minutes that he got are Scoot Henderson's minutes. And Scoot wasn't in the game because Scoot was bad tonight. And it's nice to be able to, it's kind of like, I don't know if you all watched the World Series, but the Yankees had a relief pitcher who was a submarine pitcher. And I'm not saying that Banton's game is like quirky, It's just that sometimes you need to
though.
mix it. Well, yeah, but not to like a submarine degree.
Yeah.
It's just that he brings a different element, and the Blazers needed a change of pace, and it worked tonight, and that's why he played the duration of the fourth quarter. But you're not going to see that on a night-to-night basis. I just think it's more of, let's just be excited that we have the depth on this team where you can get a guy who gets a hot hand and can run the offense and change the whole complexion of the game. But no, and as guys get healthier, I think that's going to become less and less likely.
Well, think about this right now. The Portland Trailblazers have played 7 games, and in 7 games now, what is this? 9 players have appeared in all 7, and you've got 12 different players that have appeared in total already. Even in blowout losses, that's a lot.
Sure.
Like that's
For sure.
So they've managed to work in Jabari, Rupert, Duop, and Delano past their regulars.
People calling for Jabari, by the way, because of the rebounding issue, and I think that's an interesting call.
It is. The problem also, though, is that on a night like tonight, they're not scoring, and Jabari's scoring just hasn't really pushed all the way through. So it's again, they don't have a lot of great answers for this stuff yet. So it's like,
Some spaghetti noodles against the wall.
Yeah, no, and I think if you want more Delano minutes, then go ahead and tell me which guy you want to cut and Scoot, Ryan, Chris, or any of the other guards when Shade and Ortiz come back.
Yeah.
Don't give fans that, because they're not happy with Scoot Henderson right now.
Oh, look, that's the non-linear development.
Scoot giveth, Scoot taketh away.
Yeah.
And I think it was just honestly, really what you guys said, to adding on to what you said, a change of pace error. Scoot looked very messy early on.
He didn't have it.
He looked very messy early on. One of the passes that I forgot which Blazer he was passing it to, but it just went right through his hands too, and he was like, oh. And you could just kind of feel from the offensive stance right there, like, all right, Scoot's going to have an off night.
Lack of cohesion. It never seemed like he was playing the same game that the rest of the Blazers were tonight.
Exactly.
It just felt completely off.
And yeah, I mean, that contributes to why Delano was in there for the amount of time and even down the stretch like he was. I know fans were probably like, Delano's in the last 2 minutes. Interesting strategy, right?
I mean, Chauncey has been, again, pretty honest about this, to keep what you kill. Like, if you get it done, you get it done.
Exactly.
Earned it.
We'll come back. We'll actually address more of what this team is right now on the Rip City Wrap Up, episode 8. Right now, stay tuned. We'll have more on the Blazers after the break. Welcome back to the Rip City Wrap-Up, episode 8 on the Rip City TV network. 103 to 90. Wow, I'm thinking of the last game. Wow, 103 to 97. Blazers fall to the Phoenix Suns. 2-5 record now after 7 games. What are we? What is this team? When you look at this team, what would you say we are right now?
Exactly what we hoped for. This is exactly what we hoped for. The Blazers have been competitive. Okay. They've been blown out in a way where they didn't even trick you into thinking that they were going to come back into the game. Just that's only happened one time in 7 games. And like we talked about earlier in the show, you've seen good things from all the young players at a certain point. For some of the young players, it's happened more than once. Twos look great. Roops is starting to ascend already. That's very exciting. I think this is exactly what we're looking for. I understand you can sort of poke and prod and be a little picky with what's going on with this team. And yeah, it's not been perfect. And there are certain players who could have been performing at a higher level, or some of the things that you had hoped they'd work on. Perhaps you could point to Scoot and say, yeah, I've seen it in stretches, but not consistent enough even at this point for me to feel comfortable with it. But if I had to grade the Blazers, this 2-5 team that's been competitive in 6 of their games, I'd say they've been about a B- so far.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you said. I'm going to sound more optimistic. I was going to say a B.
Yeah.
Like this is without Shaedon Sharpe even playing. Like, and that's the thing. I think most Blazers fans, when you're talking about the next era, as much as everybody says Scoot or now Donovan with some of the production he's had, Shaedon is the guy that he has shown very easily the most potential of those 3. Like I don't think that's even up for debate. Without that, they've still managed to be fun and interesting and productive and have moments for everyone. You had a night where Anthony Simons, went off in a quarter, and you had the first kind of Inferno thing that, when he gets hot, it's fun. You've had DeAndre Ayton be physical and effective and very forceful around the rim. Jeremy Grant in the first couple of games was shooting the cover off the ball. Toumani Kamara has been incredibly consistent despite Denny's struggles offensively. He is just shotgunning the box score. Rebounds, assists, blocks, steals. Like, you just find him everywhere. You go up and down every single night. Chris Murray has had a night. Roops has had a night. Like you said, everyone has had a night. And last season was so awful on so many levels. Not just the losing and the big losses.
It was a drain.
It was, oh my God, another injury.
Exhausting.
You cannot be kidding. Like this, you can't be serious. Like, it was like. And I don't want to take away from the guys that they brought up on 10 days or the G League guys that were trying to get some run. It was just like, it was very, very painful basketball because guys that are still trying to find their way in their NBA careers are going up against NBA lifers who are snatching their souls. And that's just not fun for anyone. It's not fun for those guys. Now, even with Shade and Rob being down and Matisse to start the season, they've looked effective for the most part.
And that's the thing is we're watching guys, and I know we're 2-5, 14th in the West, but you feel like you're watching players up and down the roster who might play a role in an NBA team for years to come. It's not like you're watching, like you said last year, it's just a pile of G League guys and 10-day guys, and we just need to have a warm body on the floor because everyone's hurt.
We got to get through this because it's March.
Exactly.
Tough season.
And I think Banton is sort of the representation of that tonight, right? He's a guy who hasn't played much, and when given the opportunity, really takes advantage of it. And it's really encouraging to see. And, Jabari didn't even play tonight, but he's a guy who also can contribute and has given fans something to be excited about. So while this roster is going to look way different 3-4 months from now, you should be pretty happy with the development that you've seen so far out of these Blazers.
Ahead of schedule a little bit?
I'd say right on schedule.
And I think even more than just the development part of this, they're just more fun. They're playing a brand of basketball is more fun. The defensive intensity, turning guys over. When Donovan gets some of these blocks, you're like, oh, the block that he got on Booker tonight. Booker
pointed a book like,
gave him
hey. Attaboy, young fella.
Good for you. You're really big. I'm trying to grab some opponents like I did last year for Toumani of like when he would pick them up 96 feet. There was probably 5 or 6 starting point guards in the first month that I talked to were like, how do you like Toumani? And it's things that I can't say on TV, but it was all very congratulatory and like praise given. But it was, he's tough. And then Donovan, again, the first thing that everybody says is, wow, he's huge, absolutely enormous.
And so, a way to be huge.
Yeah, keep being huge.
This is perfect. This is literally talking about Toumani and them right now. Coming from Unbiased Trailblazers podcast. I love that. Watch Toumani play brings pure joy to my eyes. what can we do to involve him even more? You know, Joe said this. The dads and everybody was going to be real happy and have that Toumani Kamara jersey.
The dads love Toumani. And to be clear, anybody can be a dad. I don't have kids. I'm a dad. Look at this shirt. Dad is not a man with kids. A dad can be anybody. Being a dad is a mindset. So just let's get that clear right now.
You'd be a great dad.
Thank you so much.
Very well.
Toumani played 34 minutes. He's in the starting lineup. He's not there from a shooting perspective that you want him taking 10 or more shots a game. I think Toumani is exactly where he needs to be right now. So I know the inclination is, oh my gosh, Donovan's amazing at blocking shots. He needs to play 25 minutes a game. 2 is obviously the person that everyone is the most excited about in Rip City right now, and for good reason. But I think he's fulfilling the role that you want him to, and he's starting to add the offensive parts of his game. And I think he's fitting where he needs to right now.
Do you want the numbers behind it?
Please.
So, according to Cleaning the Glass, the wonderful stats website, it filters out garbage time, which those stats can be juiced or a little bit weird just because of the situation. We're just trying to get on to the next, whatever. His usage rate is exactly the same as it was last year, 12.8%. The difference is his points per shot attempt went from 108.9 to 119.6. That's a pretty drastic increase. That takes him from the 31st percentile.
Can you explain what that actually means?
Yeah, so it went from the 31st percentile to the 43rd percentile.
Okay.
And points per shot attempt basically means this is how many points a player would be expected to get based on 100 shots. So your 100 possessions. That's the typical game. But everything is up. His points per shot attempt is up. His assist rate is up. His turnover percentage is down. He's got the same role in the level of role, but he's overperforming it. That's what growth looks like. You have the same level of role, but the efficiency gets better.
Danny, thank you. First of all, thank you for that. I will add my 2 cents as in this before we go to a quick break. Not yet. Not yet. I think right now what Toumani is doing is perfect for where this roster is. It's perfect for where they are in the season. I think adding more Toumani just because we're also trying to get Scoot off of, a little bit more into his sophomore season. I think we'll get there. But you also got to remember it's only been 7 games. I think adding Toumani right now more could mess up the chemistry just a tad bit just because of where they're progressing. But I do think he will be involved, especially in December, especially when we get into that NBA Cup time. He will be a lot more involved with that team. When we come back, we will look ahead to New Orleans this Monday. The Pelicans going to try and look to knock off the Blazers, but I don't see that happening.
They're going to get that one.
They're going to get that one.
We'll
talk more after the break. Episode 8 of the Rip City Wrap-Up. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Rip City Wrap-Up, episode 8 on this episode. And listen, New Orleans Pelicans, boys, they're coming back. Well, in a different way. Going there. You know what I mean. Exactly. Another stink with the New Orleans Pelicans this Monday, 6:30 p.m. tip on the road. 1-1 in the series. I think Blazers might be able to get this one because we talked on previous episodes too a little bit about this, but I'll just ask you guys quickly, what was your guys' thoughts on coming into Monday for this team?
Yeah, I mean, this is the one you get. We talked about it before the road trip. I think this is the game you get. New Orleans is banged up. Portland has already beaten them this season, and the loss was a coin flip. They had the opportunity to win the game. So I think this is the first game of the season that I feel pretty confident going in. The Blazers are going to have a really good chance to win the game, and I expect them to win the game in New Orleans.
Well, and not only that, the Pelicans are going to be coming off a back-to-back. They're playing the Atlanta Hawks tomorrow, and as of right now, we'll see what the injury report.
Kind of a back-to-back.
Yeah, I mean, it's 5 minutes away, but it's still,
and the Hawks.
Yeah. But they're going to have 3 starters out right now.
Yeah.
Trey Murphy is still out dealing with a hamstring.
That's the key.
DeJounte Murray is out with a broken wrist. Herb Jones is out with the shoulder strain. CJ McCollum is out with a adductor strain, and Jordan Hawkins was just added to as questionable tomorrow. So that's
he lit up Portland the first game.
That's 3 starters in Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, DeJounte Murray. Again, fully healthy. CJ was supposed to come off the bench, but DeJounte Murray breaks his wrist, and it's not going well for New Orleans, folks. But this is also the incredibly awful trap game that pops up for not just young teams.
Beware the injured team.
Yeah, this was the injured Blazers team last year before they went on that murderous road trip, and they went into Phoenix and they stole the first game of that back-to-back in the home series for Phoenix. They got schwacked by 30, I think, in game 2. But they stole that front one, and it was like, whoa, no Ant, no Jeremy, they got that game. It was like. So you got to be careful because the NBA still has talent, and this Blazers team has struggled offensively.
But Tyree, there's a big difference between a couple of chuckleheads up here thinking that the Blazers are going to win the game, because the Blazers should absolutely not think that they're going to win the game because they're not a good enough team to think that they are just going to go and coast and win games in the NBA. They need to start out strong. They need to figure out what's going on in the third quarter. I do think it's going to be a good result, but you can't sleepwalk against anybody in the NBA right now if you're the Blazers.
No, I remember also Chauncey Billups just talking a little bit about having those troubles on the road with this team, especially last year. That was one of the issues, just winning games on the road. But you look at the schedule right now on this 4-game road series. Yeah, they have New Orleans, and then they got San Antonio on Thursday, and then they're taking on Minnesota on Friday. I think if you look at it from the dynamic of where they were last year to right now, this is a good pace. This is really great. And New Orleans injuries do play into what Portland looked like last year. But it also means that Portland knows what that team is like.
Yeah, I mean, this is the third time they're going to play this game in just over a week.
And they were also in the shoes of New Orleans last season.
Right.
I say this is definitely a game that they should win. I would be shocked if this is tight, even in the third quarter, even though the past 2 games, the third quarters probably haven't been as pretty looking for the Portland Trailblazers. But still, especially in the third quarter when you're missing guys like that, but Portland still has all of their pieces, at least to the degree that they have, that's a win.
I was going to say, I wanted to get an idea of the look ahead. The place in the desert that does all the things with the money, they don't even have a line for this game yet.
Yeah.
That kind of gives you an idea of
we have no idea either.
We have no idea what's going on with this, and what I'm saying is the Vegas insiders have nothing. And typically that'll give you, those palaces don't get built on faulty information. They have people that are in the league, and
they're right.
They know who's going to be out and who's not. Yeah. And so you have probably multiple guys who are probably a legitimate coin toss. They're going to see what happens on Sunday. If the Pelicans get run off the floor and their starters maybe get some more rest, maybe it's a closer game. If it's a tight game down the stretch, then maybe the odds shift or Portland. There's a lot of different indicators that transpire in those games. So yeah, it's going to be we'll wait and see till Monday.
And aside from wanting this team to develop the young players, there is a needle that they're trying to thread. And part of that is winning the occasional basketball game. And I really think through the balance of 2024, it's even more important than when you flip the calendar. Because the optics of being a team that is, say, 3-17 versus 6-13. I think just that subtle difference is really important. You can't be a complete dumpster fire when it comes to wins and losses, because I think it starts to get in a young player's head at some point. Yes, for all of us, it's cool because it means a better chance at a better prospect in the draft.
Yeah.
But if you are a rookie, if you're a second-year player, if you're trying to establish yourself in the NBA, it doesn't feel good to lose.
Donovan Clingan's never lost.
Right.
This is the guy who has won 4 straight titles, 2 straight state titles.
And he's lost 5 of his first 7 games. That sucks for him.
I was talking to him about that last night. I go, are you adjusting to that? He's like, it's different. He's like, I'm not, he goes, I'm happy. It's fun. I'm learning. There's so much that I'm still trying to process. I'm still trying to take in. But he's like, yeah, this is different. I've never lost like this in my life because, again, 2 state titles, 2 national titles in college basketball. He has spent 4 straight years doing nothing but just beating everybody off the court.
Yeah, but it's also, I understand that. I understand that logic, at least when you look at it that way. But there's on this 4-game road series, San Antonio and Minnesota after, looking at it just from our perspective, I see it as more, and I appreciate you guys bringing that up on the Blazer Box.
Blazer Box!
Yeah, I love that. I see that the San Antonio game also looks like a winnable game, just on paper.
Yes.
When you look at it.
I agree. On paper, I think that's a winnable game. I just have this eerie feeling about Victor and the rest of the Spurs.
Alien?
I just have this icky feeling that game's not going to go well for Portland.
Well, look, when the Blazers played the Spurs for the first time last year, I talked to Anthony Simons after the game, and that was the chase down block from half court. And Ant blows by Wemby at half court, for those who don't remember, blows by Hezzy, tween, Euro, and he goes up, and Wemby teleports out of nowhere and absolutely sends it off the backboard. And it was like, I didn't think a human could cover that ground. Like, he just did. The idea of that. I remember Jeremy Grant. I go, what'd you think? He just went, that was the.
What are you going to do?
Like, he was like, there's
9.5 feet tall.
You have guys that are dyed-in-the-wool professionals. Professional scorers, professional basketball players. Jeremy Grant's is an Olympic gold medalist. Like, these guys have seen a lot, and for their first time seeing Wemby, it was, oh my God. And for, the 5x5 game, Wemby has started out slow, but he's already had 2 5x5 games in his NBA career. He joins 3 other players.
He's doing historic stuff while learning how to play in the NBA.
Yeah, and you're like, oh. So he's still, it's like, he's got the training wheels on. And he's still doing stuff that, 4 other people have done in NBA history. It's Shohei Ohtani, Tungsten Armo Doyle type stuff. And you're like, oh.
For them next week, but I could see a few wins. When we come back, we'll be talking a little bit about what's going on in the NBA. Just we'll have. Look at that on the Blazer Box. No, this is not breaking news. Joel Embiid is coming to Portland. This is breaking news to stop talking out your mouths, okay? This is one of the things that happened today in just trending. Trendba, a little bit of Trendba. Joel Embiid.
Touch of Trendba.
Yeah, exactly. Joel Embiid, after their game tonight, he was talking to reporters, and he had a little situation with a reporter that said something about one of his passed away relatives in a negative light in order to talk about Embiid. And Embiid didn't take too kindly to that, gave him a nice little shove, and that's what is blowing up NBA Twitter right now. So I got to get your guys' thoughts, especially from a man that knows these NBA players inside and out better than some of the people that we know. What's your thoughts on that?
I want to give some context to this because I think it's important.
For sure.
And the snippet comes from the Philadelphia Inquirer. The reporter that was in question, his name is Marcus Hayes, works for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and he wrote this about a week ago. and it was pertaining to Joel Embiid and his lack of availability. Joel Embiid consistently points to the birth of his son, Arthur, as the major inflection point in his basketball career. He often says that he wants to be great to leave a legacy for the boy named after his little brother, who tragically died in an automobile accident when Embiid was in his first year as a 76er. Well, in order to be great at your job, you first have to show up for work. What are we doing? What on earth are we doing when you're invoking the dead relative of the player that you're talking about? This is the most off-limits, off-bounds thing, and he's lucky that Joel Embiid didn't knock his teeth out.
No.
Absolutely, unequivocally, what are we doing? These rage-baiting journalists.
That's the worst part, Dan. That's the worst part. He is happy with this result.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that there was an altercation in the locker room, and that is getting blown up, and we're saying his name on TV. This is happening all around the country right now with other NBA markets. This guy is getting a lot of publicity, and you can say, oh, well, he's being talked about as a jerk. This is what he wants.
It's the Philadelphia Inquirer.
It's Philly, and if you write an article like this, this is the best possible outcome. So I'm glad Joel did that. This guy's lucky that Joel had enough restraint not to knock him out.
It's
it crosses
every line.
It's ridiculous.
You guys are both J school guys. I am not. Like I'm a international studies major. I don't have the bona fides of J school, but even I know that this is crossing so many different levels, so many different bounds. And for those that are wondering what actually transpired, the reporter decided to show up to the press conference, which I guess good on him for having the chutzpah to show up to the arena and walk in the Lions' den. Joel did not punch him. He did not even push him on the shoulder. But the reporter tried to apologize to Joel Embiid, and Joel Embiid, in some very choice words, told him he was not interested. But
Clearly,
yes,
because people are out there confronting these folks, and the fact that you cross that line and show them disrespect, everything's off limits at that point. Because everyone who saw that video of Jason Kelce was on Jason Kelce's side. It's like, wow, he showed incredible restraint. And yes, he should have smashed that phone into a million pieces. Yeah. And I don't think anyone who hears all the details of what's going on with Joel Embiid thinks that he acted inappropriately.
We got a minute left in the show, so I'm going to quickly say this real quick.
What energy?
Right? Somebody says some bad stuff about Jason Kelce's brother, Travis Kelce, and he smashed his phone. Correctly so. These journalists making us look bad. You're not supposed to touch family. They know how athletes are. They know what they're not supposed to do, and they do it anyway for clickbait. We ain't finna do that, but we are going to raise the roof for the Portland Trailblazers back again on Monday night. Bye, Bria. I love you.
Bye, Bria.
Bye, Bria.
Thanks, man.
Victor's got his mic on.